So you're embarking on your acting journey and you're wondering, what are some mistakes I'm making in my acting that are getting in the way of me accomplishing my dream? Well, I've got 5 examples for you, 5 mistakes that actors tend to make whenever they're acting. These are mistakes that beginner actors often make and mistakes that experienced actors often make. Maybe they don't make all of them all at once, but they will sometimes find themselves, oh, I'm not doing this one, or oh, I'm not doing that one. And I'm guilty of doing this myself as well. And I think what makes an experienced actor so skilled is that they can sense when they've made one of these mistakes and quickly correct it. So here are the 5. The first mistake that a lot of actors make is thinking that their vocal dynamic is the right choice for the medium they're in. And so you'll see a lot of actors that are starting to do TV and film, and they'll talk like this because they think that makes it more intimate and more real, when in reality, that's not at all what the scene calls for. And you see it also in theater too, where actors will talk at a normal rate, at a normal volume, thinking that that is all that is required in order to reach everybody in the entire theater. I actually made this mistake myself earlier on in my on-camera career. So I had just booked Person of Interest.
Door's locked.
Okay, I gotta call it in.
Whoa. Could do that, son, but you might just blow my case.
Blow case? I was on set watching the series regular, and everything that guy did was like, yeah, what do we gotta do? Let's do this. It was very like action intense, soft. And I just kind of assumed that that meant that he was a good actor. I was like, oh, that's what's making him a good actor. Now, I'm not saying his choice to be vocally quiet and intense was the wrong choice for his character. I actually didn't watch the show that much, so I couldn't know. But for me to presume that that one thing is what made him a professional on-camera actor was a rookie mistake. He may have been doing that because he's actually talking in an earpiece and he doesn't want to be overheard by other people. He doesn't want to draw attention to himself, which I think actually is what he's doing in most of the scenes. That also it does for his character lend a certain gravitas. But if you're aiming at creating gravitas by just changing the intonation of your voice, you end up doing like a very phoned in, on surface performance that doesn't really resonate with the audience. Mistake number 2 is listening. And I say listening, what I mean is listening and responding, interacting, and allowing yourself to be changed based off how your partner, scene partners, or environment are changing and adapting and behaving around you. It's a lot easier to avoid this mistake in person. Now that so many auditions are on tape via Zoom, people can get lost in their own performance. The way that I made this mistake early on in my career was at Elon University, and I was auditioning for the other plays, and like I thought my audition went really well. I was doing monologues in order to get seen for parts, right? And so I did my monologue. I thought it was so intense and so exciting. And I went to the head of the department and I asked him, like, what could I have done better? And he had me start my monologue. And so I'm over there, you're me now, and you're doing your really intense monologue. And he starts like going about his office and like looking at an apple and then paying attention to me and then putting that down and then going over here. And like my audition tried to stay the same, and I got confused when he wasn't paying attention to me. And the entire point was that I wasn't taking anything in spontaneously or that would throw me off while I was doing my monologue. Everything was like perfectly planned, just as I planned it and perfectly delivered. But I wasn't allowing for spontaneity or things to throw me off or surprises, which is actually how real life is. You never quite know exactly how it's going to play out. Even in like war campaigns or like spy campaigns like the Marines, where they have a very well thought out plan, what they've learned is that they actually have to do something called commander's intent, which is that once you get into a war action, the plan starts to change and adapt based off what the other people are doing in the war. You can't just be like, well, the commander said to do this back at base because now the landscape is different. The weapons are different. The people fighting you are different. You landed in a slightly different location than you planned in. So many things are changing. So they endow you with the power to change the plan or adapt the plan as long as it fulfills the commander's intent. And that's kind of what you want to do as an actor. You want to know what your intent is, but you have to adapt based off what is happening in front of you. So I'm coming to this scene like seeking to be understood, and depending on how my theater teacher was responding to me or not, I need to be adjusting how I'm communicating. But I wasn't doing that. I was just kind of like, I want to perform the way I want to perform it, which is very, it's a little bit narcissistic. It's a little bit like, look at me. If ever you feel like you're acting in a way and it's like, look at me, you know, and when I say look at me, I mean, you want the audience to be looking at you, you want the camera to be looking at you, but you're not really like with your partner and you're like, if you're saying to your partner, like, look at me, because they're not looking at you, that is one thing. But if you're just performing, it can get a very little one note, and people can kind of pick up on it. Mistake number 3 that a lot of beginner actors make is pushing for emotion. When you first start out acting, you really think that success in acting is all about how much you can feel, and perhaps even worse than that, is how much you can show other people you're feeling, which kind of goes back to point number 2 about listening, where you started to make it more about you than about the scene. When you are pushing for an emotion, you're thinking about yourself, and you're thinking about, look at all these tears that are coming, or you're thinking the opposite, God, why can't I cry? But you're not thinking whatever you're supposed to be thinking about in the scene. So if I'm in a scene and let's take John Q. Let's say I'm a dad fighting for my son to get an operation, and I don't have the money, and but I'm fighting with the administration, I'm fighting, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. What I'm feeling is irrelevant as the dad. My objective, like what I must do, and I use the word objective, but some people use other words. As a dad, what you have to do is take care of your son. So I am willing to do whatever it takes to take care of my son. If that means I have to like intimidate, I'm going to do that. If that means I have to plead, I'm going to do that. If I have to negotiate, I'm going to do that. How I feel is kind of irrelevant. Now, if I'm locked in and my son needs a life-saving operation, I'm going to be feeling things, and you're going to be experiencing that I'm feeling things. But I can't be thinking like, is the camera catching all of my feelings? Is the audience catching all of my feelings? To a certain extent, you have to practice enough with the camera so that you know you are open to it, right? So like if I'm dealing with my son over here, I'm not gonna put my son over here like a self-tape. I'm gonna put my son like right here so you can see everything I'm seeing. Son, I got you. Don't worry about it, right? Like you can still get into my eyes over here versus if I had him over here. Little things like that, that matters, but I'm not thinking about that while I'm dealing with my son, or while I'm dealing with the doctors or the police force, or whoever it is I have to interact with. So thinking about your emotions and pushing your emotions is a major mistake. What you want to do in classes a lot of the times is learn to allow yourself to feel a lot more. I think therapy can be really helpful for that, because you can explore feelings that you may have like squished down and not allowed yourself to feel. A lot of men have squished their vulnerability, their sadness in exchange for anger, and a lot of women have squished their anger in exchange for tears and sadness. It's not a rule, but it is a thing that tends to recur as the more actors you see out in the world. So that's number 3, pushing for emotions. Number 4, pacing. Oh my goodness, pacing. Pacing becomes a problem a lot of times when you're pushing for emotion. So if you are trying to drum up a lot of tears, right? A lot of times actors will slow a scene down just so they can get that last tear out, regardless of like what the circumstances in. Again, if I'm John Q, the Denzel movie, and I'm trying to take care of my son, I'm not going to slow down my urgency of getting the hospital or the doctors to take care of my son so that you can see this tear. It's just, that would be weird, right? So I'm gonna focus on taking care of what I need to take care of as the character, and I'm not going to slow it down for the sake of my emotion. Usually in movies, they'll be building on building and building and building tension, which requires pace and pace and pace and pace. And then there will be an emotional release that will feel really good, where the writer has kind of designed it, the director's designed it. You guys can talk about it, but it's usually like somewhere about 75% of the movie in, where the climax is hitting, it's getting really intense. And they have allowed for you to let it loose, either emotionally, or the climax is over and you can finally cry. There are certain places where it's important to the storytelling, but when you prioritize what you look like, or how you're feeling, or doing it perfect over the natural pacing that the scene requires, you're killing the scene. The other thing is that in comedy, pacing is a huge part of what makes things funny. As soon as the audience can see where something is going before the actor gets to it, it diminishes their ability to laugh. Surprise is a key factor in laughter. The 5th big mistake that a lot of actors make, especially beginner actors, is being one note. And by being one note, it tends to be something where you realize your character is angry, right, about something. And you just play angry for like 2 minutes straight. Just like, I'm angry the whole time. And you don't find any humor, you don't allow yourself to be surprised or caught off guard or vulnerable or seductive or or scary, or, you know, like even in a scene where you need to come across as, say, intimidating, let's say it's like a mob or a crime drama. Like, it's my job to let this other party know that I know everything about where he's moving all the time. I'm not gonna be like, listen, I know everything about where you're moving all the time. I'm gonna be very like calm with him. I'm actually gonna be very friendly. Would you like something to drink? It's good to see you. Yeah, it's very nice to see you. Look, I've noticed that you've been circling my business a lot. What was that about? Okay, that's funny. It's really interesting. And then at some point I'll shift. I'm gonna need you to stop doing that. And if he pisses me off some more, now I might get angry. If you don't stop. And like, here's the thing about power. The person who moves least has the most power. So if I want that character to seem more powerful, if they're the main character, I'll allow myself to get angry. Listen, if you don't back off of this right now, and he can stay still, right? He'll look really powerful. But if I want to be the more powerful one, I'll be like, if you don't stop coming around here, I'm gonna have to make a visit to that school of yours. Yeah, you know the one. And so now I have all the power. That's a little bit of a bonus about power, but you can see how if in a scene where it's designed to be intimidating, I'm not just gonna play like one note. I'm not gonna play one note like distant like this the whole time. I'm gonna start friendly if I can. Try and make reason with this guy. Whatever it is, look for opportunities to give a behavior change to avoid being one note. Those are 5 mistakes that actors often make. I thought I'd share them with you. If this has been helpful, give this video a like, give it a subscribe. Let me know in the comments which tip was helpful to you, which tip you really needed to hear, and I'll make more content on acting coming out soon, so subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I appreciate that. It helps the channel. It also encourages me to want to keep making videos, to be very honest with you. So, all right, that's it for me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.